It's like, massive corruption across the country. It's not only projects being done in Tripoli or practices being done in Beirut, it's across the country. And I'll add to that also is the implication of the multi-confessional system that we have. And that led actually to the incompetence of the government in dealing with their own matters as well. Because if every project you want to do, if every hiring of an employee, of every decision that you'll have to make, you will have to take into consideration factors that I would consider as being low in priority, that led actually to what's happening. It's the piling up of so many things, including corruption, as I said, the multi-confessional system and its implication on everything we do. It's the incompetence of the government, and most importantly is the inability of those who are currently in power to provide solutions. And I believe also the corrupt minds cannot provide uncorrupt solutions. And that's why I believe that the situation, the way it's heading, it's not going to be resolved by the current political class, but by a different group of individuals, clean with a vision of how to save Lebanon, who would go beyond the religious borders that the current politician actually built around every single act, built around the way they manage the country and so on.
No one is a devil or an angel in himself, but the system would turn anyone to be a devil at some point. So unless you change the system, everyone, even if he claimed to be a righteous person, will turn in even a couple of months, because it's the role actually that will turn someone to be, he feels that he's doing really good for his own people, for the people who are also outside. He's stuck between serving his people in a direct way, like giving them some services, and he's also stuck with the external powers and they want him to do just specific things and say specific things as well. And without him, he cannot actually serve his people. His people, I mean his sect or his faction or the city where most of his constituency are. So I think he's just stuck in a role, and unless you break all these rules, you would also have other devils who used to claim in the uprising that they are the righteous.
Jamil Karam
Obeida Takriti. When I hear a lot of people talking about being good and they want to lead and they are the technocrats, if they don't have actually a vision for a different system, I wouldn't really give them, for example, my voice in this case, because they will end up the same. The system has produced the same kind of people all over again. Like, for example, before 2005, we had 3 main players, and then after 2005, different new players who came on the political scenes, and everyone thinks, nothing has changed in the last 30 years, but actually a lot has changed, but it has produces the same result.
So it doesn't matter who's in charge.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel the same way, Jim?
I definitely, regarding corruption, I definitely feel the same way, because no matter what the political system is, what leads to corruption is lack of accountability.
Yes.
What leads to corruption is about, I would say, the malfunction of our accountability agencies or institutions within the state. They're supposed to do their role, but because of the multi-confessional system, the current politicians are hiding behind it to get all their dirty deals through. Right. So we hide behind the multi-confessional system because we say, we had to do this because the other Lebanese fraction wanted to push us in a different direction. Yeah. So corruption is going to happen because of lack of accountability, lack of accountability bodies and so on. And also, and that's something really, it shows how it shows the quality and the characteristics of the current political class. They consider the state as being a private property, and there is nowhere else in the world, probably there is another country or 2 or 3 countries across the globe. They deal with it as a private property, means the politician, whether it's the members of the cabinet or the members of the parliament, they can take any decision without being questioned. And they hide behind multi-confessionals sometimes to defend themselves. And they hide behind defending the rights of their religious groups to cover their dirty or malpractice and so on. And that's what led actually to the current uprising. And I believe those who went in the streets, following the WhatsApp cost, the WhatsApp pricing cost.
One of the worst ideas ever.
Yeah, and I believe those people who went in the streets because they felt we're fed up with what's happening at the cabinet side. We're fed up what's happening at the parliament side. We're fed up what's happening of the inefficient presidency or leadership of the country. And I would say that's the natural sequence of things to see the uprising or revolution reaching its phase. It's not uncommon. It's the normal and the natural path of the people of Lebanon seeking a new system.
Let me ask you, do you think it's the system which you've described well? Is it part of the reason it's taken this long for people to demand something new? Because we're talking about something that's 30 years old, if not older.
I think if we go back to the history of the system, and we don't want to demonize the system without also referring to its instrumentality in the history of Lebanon, because after 1990 you wanted to keep peace between these militias, and they were the one to take the authority.
Right.
So it was their way as an instrument to hold peace for the first at least 10 years, I think. And then the system started to collapse. But because of Paris 1, Paris 2, Paris 3, then different mechanisms and also regional changes, everyone was supporting this regime to stay strong. So I think in the first 10 years it was instrumental, and then it started to collapse, but with a lot of aspirants, let's say, and some.
So it was a slow-moving collapse.
Yeah.
Okay, because it is striking. 30 years is a long time.
I think they knew the solution and they put it actually in power. So they weren't really stupid and didn't really know what to do next, but they actually locked the system and found that it's really beneficial to them to stay in power, because they knew that they don't have a power beyond the civil war and also the first few years to stay at their position. Especially, I think, for factions who didn't really have power at that time, because they got really their power because of the system itself. So, for example, whether it's Hariri or new factions within the Christians community, or even the Shias themselves, the new groups, because they didn't really have any power before 1975.
Right.
So there was a new kind of balance between these, and they wanted to just keep it there.
Do you feel the same way?
I definitely do feel the same way. And, it's not about the name, it's about the political approach.
Right.
And for me, corruption started from 1943, from the day of Lebanon's independence. So going from the Sultan Salim to the Sihr al-Azim. So that's a long way of history in corruption. And ironically, not a single person were sentenced in front of court. So that what's the message being sent to all the corrupt minds? Is said you can do it, and the system is protecting you.
But 1943, that's 76 years of
76
bad
years.
governance.
For me, that's my
Wow.
own stance.
Yeah.
And that started with the Sultan Salim. He was the brother of the president of Shah al-Khoury.
Yeah.
And he was behind all the deals that went behind the scenes, whatever. And he was...
So in a way, we're uprising against the way Lebanon was born, not the way Lebanon is dying. It's actually fundamental. It's the structure itself.
And that's a political approach that continued over time. That's what I'm saying. Continued over time. So the president back then, who was the person in charge of managing the country, he was the mastermind behind everything.
Yeah.
And no one would question him. And the same went back when we reached the Taif agreement. No one would question any single minister in the cabinet. No one would question a member of the parliament, except once we had a drug dealer. He was sued by the I don't know, political class or the military, the Syrian military intelligence back then, and everyone was against him because probably he was not sharing with them part of the wealth that he was getting. So I'm saying this to reach a point where to say if we want to fight corruption, it's the political approach that we should change. It's not the people, and the current people in power should not be there because they're the continuation of what happened in the past.
Right.
And I always think about when you get a box of apples, and then when all the box is rotten, So it doesn't matter if you change one or two apples. The whole box is rotten. So
And the rot spreads even if you have a good apple in there. So I'm curious, we're younger than 1943, right? So we're the post-war generation. We probably have some memory of the war. And we're all from Tripoli, even though you live and you're literally working in Tripoli. But I remember Tripoli from the 1980s. And I know that things did improve to a degree after the war ended. But if I'm understanding this right, the reason Lebanon's post-war situation did not reach a better point is because inherently the system is flawed. So at their core, do you think people are protesting 1943 without knowing? Or are they simply demanding an economic improvement? And I ask because I'm trying to bridge this gap. And you said it earlier, WhatsApp text was the final sort of tipping point. But if things improved economically over the next few weeks, do you think the momentum would still be there for changing the way Lebanon is governed?
So Lebanon was one of the hundreds nations or nation states, let's say, that were just created in the 1900s. But some of them had the ability to actually bypass the foundational problem and found so many solutions, especially in the global south, as they say. So, and I always question why didn't Lebanon or even most of the Middle Eastern countries, why weren't they able actually to cross these problems, to produce actually a better economy, a better economic system? And I think people focusing only on the economic, if we limit the people reason to do the uprising only for economic reasons, I think we are belittling a lot of the people who are on the ground. So I think there are some people with the consciousness that they are revolting for something bigger,
Right.
and people who are revolting for other reasons. And the let's say the aggregation of all of these is a different outcome at the end, whether it's on the political layer or on the economic layer.
Right. So the two are really linked together.
I think it's very complex, so we cannot really
Yeah.
summarize summarize everyone as one group. And it's okay to have so many people with so many voices, but at the end, I think they will aggregate in something very specific and an outcome that no one of these groups knows about. So,
Okay. And do you feel the same way, Jimmy?
I definitely agree with Obeida. I wanted to clarify the reflection on the 1943 corruption
Yes.
startup and then leading to here. I would say briefly that I mentioned this to help you see the depth of the problem. I'm not saying those people who are protesting here are protesting because of that, but that's
Right.
part of my, if you want, the self-reflection that I've done from my perspective to the history of the country and where it all started.
Right.
I do not want to go beyond the 1943 backwards. I would definitely have plenty of examples, but I felt like that's a good thing to go back in time and see the causes of the problem so we can generate solutions.
One could argue 1943 is closer to 1865 anyway, so it's probably that's a paradigm in itself.
And what I agree with Obeida, ironically, I agree with him on so many things, is that there are so many voices.
What's
there.
wrong with Tripoli? Everyone's having a good time.
I cannot talk on their behalf, but I at least share what I witnessed because I represent my own voice. Definitely people are in the streets for better economic conditions. Definitely people are in the streets for better social justice. And especially in Tripoli, as you know it, if we're talking about the dropout rate in schools, if we're talking about the poverty, if we're talking about marginalization, it's like a massive marginalization of population within the city, and we're not talking only about Tibani and Jabal Masik. We're talking about Tripoli itself. We're talking about Mina and so on. We're talking about some would want better health services. Some would want better educational services. Like everything, it's like all at the same time. And the challenge of the if you want, the post-war era, is that most of the cabinets were only focusing on where the money is going to be spent.
Which is primarily Beirut in that sense, I'm guessing.
Or either parliament, mainly in Beirut, or if we say, we're going to spend it on infrastructure, but we did not spend it on people.
Yeah.
No one can deny that all the governments in Lebanon spend money in revamping the educational infrastructure in Lebanon, from Nakura to Abdi. No one would question this. But the money was spent in stones, was spent in concrete, was spent in providing probably equipment to some schools in Akkar or Bsharri or Baalbek that people do not know how to maintain.
So that's just cosmetic. That's not.
Instead of
structural.
saying, okay, we're investing in the future of Lebanon, so we want to invest in the educational sector. So we're gonna develop a new class of teachers. We're gonna develop a new class of students and teaching them the values of peace, tolerance. We have not done this. Probably we've done it on paper because I witnessed. I'm a follower of all what's happened on the educational sector from like probably the mid 90s. I don't think there was a strong commitment to initiate change. And ironically, the only government that went fully digital is the Ministry of Finance, because every single group who got in power used this to spend money to stay in power, whether it was in 1990, whether it was in 2005.
The ministry that they needed to
Absolutely. But the question is why they didn't digitize the social security system? Look, why people till now they will have to wait in line, bringing the papers or the covers of the medicines or the drugs to get reimbursed 6 or 7 months after. You want to know why people are on the streets? Look at your practices in social security, in health, in education.
So maybe this is a good point to actually get to what you're doing. You've done your part individually. Can you just describe what you're doing in Tripoli and how it relates to this revolt?
So it started actually. The initiative is called Saha, ومساحة, and started with people wanting to talk about politics, because we didn't really used to talk about politics, especially in public areas. So we started with a small megaphone, around 10 people or 7.
With an actual megaphone?
Yeah, with an actual
wow.
megaphone. Yeah.
Was that the first days of the uprising? Was that?
Yeah, it was in the third day on
Third day.
Saturday. So, and my father used to have it like from the 90s.
So this is a big downgrade. You went from megaphone to microphone.
Yeah. And we grew actually, and it was just to meet each other at the square, talk about politics, and then hopefully to do something about this information, all these talks that we're because we are responsible about what's happening in the country, and politics is not about doing politics in coffee shops and only like.
So you deliberately wanted to do it outside, بالساحة. That was a determination.
And always focusing also on using this information politically in the city. So whether to start a small initiative about food, or whether to start a political party, or whether to start another non-violent resistance tactic. So these are the main 3 goals of the initiative, and we grew actually from 10 to I think 200 to 300 participants using the
It's
sessions.
local politics.
Yeah.
So that means, I'm guessing, Tripoli focused
No, not only.
issues.
It's also national politics. We did also some sessions on regional politics.
Okay.
And along with مدرسة المشاغبين, we did more than 100 sessions in the last 47 days. Yeah.
So that also every day you have at least 2 or 3 sessions.
2 to 3, yeah.
Okay, so Jimmy, can you tell me a bit about your?
Like I'm part of the مدرسة المشاغبين, or School of Rioters, and also we started the first few days of the revolution or uprising, and I believe like Obeida and our group was one of the first groups in that particular island in the middle of the street who took later on, if you want, the reputation of being the dialogue place.
Yes. This is before all the TV was there. This is before everyone was talking about Tripoli. It's really the first days.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we started in a similar way, and probably Obeida had a megaphone, we did not. So we had a small tent, and we had groups of 10 to 15 people sitting around around in a circle, talking about the current happenings in Tripoli.
Yeah.
And what we focused on as being a school of rioters is focus on our reputation. So in the eyes of the government, we are rioters. So for us, our response to that is to show them that we can succeed in creating dialogue.
Yes.
We can succeed in getting people, to communicate, share their concerns about what's happening in Lebanon. And that's our way to reach a level where we can encourage them to be accountable in the future.
I'm curious, how did you guys mobilize your audience? Did you just wait for people to show up, or were you proactively using technology, social media? Because it's fascinating. It goes from a few people to hundreds of people very quickly. So how did you attract your audience?
We opened our Facebook page 2 days ago, and we have only one post for now, and it's just the today agenda, because
Right.
first I didn't want people to come for the sessions,
Yeah.
but I wanted them to come to the square and
Yeah.
then choose some of the activities, and one of them would be the discussions. And we started like the people I know that wanted to talk politics,
Yeah.
and then everyone on the street would catch up and see, okay.
But were you using your phone? Just literally messaging your friends saying, come
No,
to
no,
this?
no, at all. I was always coming to the square in the morning or at noon, doing some singing, some protesting, and then also.
So you didn't use technology? You just
no.
set yourself up in the square and people
It
came?
was part of, because I wanted actually people to go from their phones actually to the square, and I didn't want to use it, at least even for the marketing of this. So
Wow.
I relied on word of mouth, on the amount of people who are coming to the square.
Yeah.
So, and I think as an experiment, it was really a good experiment at the end, because people knew about it not only from social media, but also from the small connections that were built up from 10 people. Then, so it was like a network way of doing this.
But this is the old-fashioned human interaction
Of doing trade in Tripoli.
Yeah, I mean, you actually used what Tripoli is good at to make this work on your own. I'm quite impressed. Your first Facebook post was just a few days ago. I mean,
No, it was today.
Today, I wrongly assumed. I thought you were using social media from the beginning. Or did you?
We had a different approach.
Yeah.
So the way we were getting people to come to our tent is we used to go and survey them in the Saha, so around the around Ism al-Jalala in
Yes,
Sahet
yes.
EnNour. So we went and surveyed people. One of the fewest organizations like to survey people about the reasons why they came to protest, and how do they think the roadmap should be, and if they want to leave the streets after a while or not. So we asked so many questions, and we got data, and that's the way to get people to come to us to the tent. And back then we
They were coming to you.
because you go,
Right.
you survey them, and you tell them, hey, there is a tent there,
Right.
50 meters away.
Yes.
So come, we're having talks and so on. And Obeida probably would remember, we were one of the fewest groups to have morning sessions. So we used to gather around 11 o'clock. So we used to have sessions between 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. The first few days we had more people at that time in the Saha. And the talks were around how to protect the uprising. The talks were around, how we're going to ensure that people are still mobilized to reach our goals. And we were listening to what the people were saying. And then a few days after, we did our Facebook page, and that triggered some interest. So now we have around 2,000 likers.
So you used social media from the beginning.
So we used social media early in the early stage, and we used to cover all our events on social media, hoping to get more people abroad. But most of our sessions were small back then, and then we decided to go into the schools, knowing that most of us are educators. So the people, the wonderful people I work with are educators. So either high school teachers or university professors. So we all come with university.
So you took what you were doing from the Saha back to the schools themselves.
So we started talking to people, teachers we know, say, hey, you know what, we have sessions, come. And the largest group we got from a local school in town, we got 120 students one of the sessions.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing to know how much
This is when the schools were closed.
Yeah.
Wow. So students were coming back to school. in a way.
And that's the purpose. And even the names of what we did is we used to say, okay, that's a curricular session, that's an extracurricular session. So we're using actually educational terminology
Without getting grades.
without getting grades. And the only discussions, the only ground rules were there is no right and wrong answer, and people would have to respect each other's opinion. These are the only two others, because we were hoping that people would listen and hear a different perspective. We don't believe in a mono perspective or a mono message being sent.
Let me ask you, I heard you say that you were at the beginning conscious that you wanted this revolution to succeed, and you're trying to protect the goals of the revolution. And you also said that you were asking people if they're getting tired, if they would leave. I mean, from your perspective, from your work, do you sense that people are getting tired? That time is a detriment as opposed to something positive?
It's actually playing a huge negative role, especially because people are really tired. Even the authority is tired, so everyone actually is tired. But especially middle class and poor people are really tired at this point. And I think it's just the beginning of the collapse. And no one is actually taking responsibility for what would happen also in the coming few days, months, and this year. And because the problem actually can't be resolved like in the last 30 years with small patches and small stitches, because we have a systemic problem and we don't have any support. Like usually someone would pump up money just to solve the problem, but now we are at a state like we need to think about everything on the state level and also on the local level, but not on the individual level.
Can I ask you, when you say state and local, do you mean elections? Is that
no, not election.
No.
I mean, we need a different government and a different also local representative. Not, I mean, like the problem is about representation, but about dealing with the current crisis first before dealing with the problem of representation, because we are at a stage where people are suffering on the medical level, food level, on the.
I think even in terms of just mental health deteriorates over time. So you see it as playing a negative role.
Yeah.
Jimmy, do you find that your work is also limited because of how long this revolution is taking?
Definitely time is playing against the work that we do in terms of getting things done quicker. But the value of what we do, whether in Saha or the School of Rioters, the value of what we do is long term. Is when you're raising awareness, you're raising awareness on the long term. When you're trying to help people see and respect diversity, that's some of the values of the new Lebanon that we're trying to create. When we're talking about we want a democratic system, a free system where accountability prevails. That's something on the long term. Now on the short term, we're trying as much as we can to spread positive energy. On Obeida's side, on our side, we're trying to spread positive energy, a variety of ways to help them see the roadmap that we don't know. But at least there are two things that most of the people who went into the streets are there is a consensus upon, which is a transitory government away from the current political class, and then early elections based on a system that would correct the representation of different Lebanese fractions.
And you want that, I'm assuming you want that sooner than later. What can people like you do to speed up the process? Or is there anything that you can do?
I think we are merely playing the roles of facilitators or catalysts, but not actually the people who are changing. So even the style of our session is different than the other people who are also doing different sessions, because we are letting people, we are not giving any lectures, we are facilitating discussions. We are relying on these people to also come up with other initiatives. We are relying on these small connections and these network of people to do different things, and so we are trying to provide them with a positive vision, with some of the tools or some of the ideas. We are helping them through being part of their network, or also with giving up some of the examples through our initiatives, like different initiatives that we are trying to be part of. And I think it's a bet in this case, because we are not really controlling what will happen, but we are confident that all of these, let's say, like being a catalyst at this point, would turn in, strategically as a good. We will have a good outcome at the end, we believe. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on the street doing all of this.
So you're hopeful that despite it taking long, that there is something good that will happen at the end of all this. You do see a shift, that this will not go back to the way it was a year ago or even 10 years ago. You sense that there is something on the horizon.
I would say definitely yes. You know, October 17 is a D-Day for a new Lebanon.
Yes.
And things that came after are not going to go backwards.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about the time playing against us as individual because of the socioeconomic status of the people in the streets, because of their financial need, because of their health requirements and so on. I believe also it's playing against the government, because no matter what they're going to do, things are going to go, things are going to get worse. And worse and worse. And I believe this is going to bring people back to the streets. So one day is going to come.
And you think that patience, sorry to interrupt, the patience of the average citizen protesting is longer than the political class?
I don't know if I can say this, but because also the patience of the Lebanese, the average Lebanese citizen is to worry about how they're going to feed their families, is to worry about if they want to go to the hospital, if they have money to pay the doctors and the service as well. So it's a double-edged sword. However, being as catalyst is thinking about how we help people see the roadmap. We don't have deadlines, but at least we can estimate. Because now we've been also almost 50 days in the revolution, and till now we're waiting for the president to say, oh, okay, I'm inviting the beloved MPs to come for consultation to nominate it. But still, it did not take place. So we know that it's a long term, and hopefully the message that we're conveying is helping people see that, okay, it's taking time, but we're heading there. It's okay that we're facing hurdles and challenges, but you know what? This is how we can do it. This is how we can help ourselves to do it. And Obeida mentioned something about we don't have a political message in our sessions. There's no political message. He's helping people see how to get through. So if we say how we're gonna fight corruption, we encourage people to generate solutions. And it's amazing to see the level and the depth of those solutions generated by the people.
I actually think that is politics in the proper definition of politics. I think over time we got used to the bad definition here, and we associate politics with poor performance, no accountability, corruption. I think what you guys are doing is actual politics. It's literally civil engagement and it happens to be literally in the middle of where everything's happening. So it's more symbolic. This is not I know that I like that you're taking this back to school, but I'm sure students prefer being there than they do in their classroom. In Beirut, you have lectures in the Egg, in the middle of downtown Beirut. AUB is giving lectures in an abandoned cinema. And I think students actually do appreciate doing that more than being in a locked campus.
Although time is a pressuring aspect on all of us, also we're brainstorming solutions how to get the message through and try to target as many people as we can. So we're even exploring ways to communicate with people who are not coming to Sahet. EnNour. We're exploring ways how we're gonna reach them, even in their own communities, because we believe that they have the right to know what's happening. They have the right to be cared for. They have the right to know what the future is hiding. And with our humble resources, we're trying as much as we can to connect with as many individuals as we can to help them see that, you know what, this is our cause. This is not Obeida's cause. This is not Jimmy's cause. This is not Ronnie's cause. This is our cause, and help them see that the new Lebanon is way better of what they're going through now. And personally, I believe the new Lebanon is way better, because I believe the new Lebanon is about social justice, where now we have marginalized communities. The new Lebanon is about an anti-corruption nation, an anti-corruption nation where the natural resources of the country are being spent on the people. And we're not talking about a socialist system or a liberal system. We're talking about the right for people to benefit from their natural resources. They have the right for health, right for education, right for social security, right even for pension, good pension and retirement, and so on. These are natural rights, preserved by the Universal Chart of Human Rights. And we believe the new Lebanon is way better than this. And what they did in the past 15, 20, 30 years, and if you want to go back to independence, is giving people false hopes, except during a certain time when we felt there is something happening, there is prosperity taking place. But that was a short time in our history.
I appreciate this long view because it looks more and more that whenever there was economic prosperity, it was not because of the way Lebanon is governed. It's just that we were lucky at a few intervals in our history, and the political grievances took a step back. And as soon as the economic problems reemerged, people went and challenged the system. And I don't know, do you share the same kind of hope, Jim, Obeida?
And actually about redefining politics, we started one of the first sessions about redefining politics from سياسي to شأن العام, to public affairs. The name of a politician سياسي to the serviceman, like the one who gives services for people. And at the end, we want these people to consider themselves not only as voters, but also as people who might be a member of parliament, ministers, mayors, to work actually in the public sector. Because usually, if you ask any young person in this country, you want to be an engineer or a doctor and just go abroad. But no one usually considers themselves as being part of this country and want to serve in the public affairs of this country. So
at times, the average protester could be 21, 22, or even younger. It's nice to hear these words from people that are older. Because now that I know how old you are, in your mid-50s, Jimmy, you're really hopeful, you're really optimistic, and you remember the Civil War, you remember the Syrian occupation, you remember Israeli invasions, you remember everything that went wrong after the war ended, and you still are very hopeful. And I think that's the kind of positivity that I think is making this moment magical. It's not just kids with dreams, it's all generations that are, in a way, expecting the same decency. Do you think the most effective way in the next phase of all this protesting and demonstrating, do you think it makes sense to focus on one type of election? In other words, would you rather go into local elections, municipal elections, as opposed to parliamentary elections? Or do you think parliamentary is more important? Or do you think all elections matter now? What, in terms of just strategy, turning all this into change, political change, what would you focus on?
I believe first we need to handle the economic crisis, at least for the upcoming year and a half at least.
Yeah. So economy matters more now.
Yeah, because it matters for all of us. So even so we need just to handle it, because no one will go. Even other politicians will use the election in this economic crisis to win representation. So we need actually to solve it first, give people some space to actually live, and then we will go into election. And it doesn't really matter which one to start, because usually, because it's only for Beirut and Tripoli where local election really matters, because it's on a big scale and for a big municipality.
So there's no need now to focus on parties or anything like that.
They need to start now, but they can't actually win if there is a new election now, just an early election. I think only the authority is asking for an early election. Like they said, okay, in the coming 2 months. Okay. But people need time to actually prepare their ideas, their groups, to organize themselves. I think first we need to deal with the economic crisis that's hitting everyone.
And does that mean putting pressure on the caretaker government to do their job? Or does that mean just waiting for this regime to fall and then putting those demands on something new?
They need to give it to other people, to independent people who can actually handle the crisis, because they can't handle it.
Okay. Right. Now, Jimmy, with your older perspective, do you think that politics matter and elections matters right now, whether it's local or national?
The way we were promoting sort of a roadmap during during the revolution and during our sessions is thinking about a transitory or transition government that deals with three main things. So Obeida mentioned the economic / financial engineering policy that we have to take care of, so we protect the mass of the Lebanese people.
Right.
And the second is cleaning the judicial system, which is essential so we can start immediately on opening up all the cases of corruption and so on. And the third is early election. Those three goes together.
So it's all encompassing. It's not one or the other.
Those are in my perspective, those are the three essential, if you want, tasks or duty of the new transitory government. Is the economic side, the judicial side, and the early election side. And we do need a new system. It doesn't have to be. It will remain a multi-confessional system. No one is changing this now. That's a long term because there is no consensus in everyone, and you need also to build national unity before you reach that phase. You need to build national unity and make everyone feel part of this nation before we say, okay, we're going to change the system and we're going to transform you in a better place. We have to do this gradually. And personally, I believe those three things, if we push towards towards the president to launch the parliamentary consultation, that would be great. And probably our effort now should be focused on.
So you have expectations for the caretaker government as well. It's not that wait for them to go and then.
No. The expectation is not only the government, the current government. The expectation is on the president because it's by constitution a parliamentary consultation to nominate a new cabinet president. And that's the right of the Lebanese people. And the president, despite the fact that in the constitution there is no deadline for him to say, I'm going to launch it within a week, within 2, within 3. But the current socio-economic / political conditions should force him to work 24 hours to launch them and get a clean, uncorrupt prime minister who would form a government to deal with the 3 issues that we just mentioned.
And your opinion here, do you think that is going to happen? Do you see this man able to now, in his last days, do his job at such a... I mean, these are low expectations. It's not like you're asking him to think out of the box. You're just asking him to do his job. Do you see that happening?
Based on how the current outcome of things, I don't think that we have people in the current political system who are ready to listen and look at what happened in the streets. That it's a warning that we're shaking the foundation of the political system. They're not seeing it like this. And it's sad because the minute they need the people to protest and fight for them during the election, they consider them as being noble, as being mature, as being wise, as all the positive stuff that they describe the Lebanese people with. But the minute those people would go against them, immediately we start seeing those negative descriptors of who are those in the streets, that those are the traitors, that those are with the the occupation, no matter what the occupation is. And our message for us as people working in the Saha is showing the people around us, a sort of an image of what the new Lebanon is about. What we're doing even during our interaction. So when we're talking about communicating with each other to reach a decision, when we're exploring ideas, that we're showing the people around us that that's the way through. And our unity is really important. And the message we're saying, despite it's not a political message, it's about a message about values and political values. We're united against occupation, no matter what the occupation is. We're united against the corruption, no matter if the corrupt people are from one side of the country or the other side, or from this particular group, or we're united against the undemocratic practices of the government, and the list would go on. We're united in this, and hopefully we can build on this, so we can get more people mobilized, so we can keep the pressure. And unfortunately, what happened in different regions in Lebanon did not help what was happening in Tripoli. And
So
I felt
what do you mean by that?
it means, you know, things slowed down in other regions
because
in
just,
Lebanon.
yeah.
For so many reasons, and I believe, and with my connection, with my interaction with people in Tripoli, people of Tripoli, the Tripolitans are a bit deceived that for people living in other countries, in other cities, they may have in a way deceived them to a certain extent, because they felt, you know, the route to a new country goes back clear steps that everyone in the streets would
That's
reiterate.
interesting. So you think that the demands of Tripoli were actually higher?
I would say Tripoli has done its work
You know,
to move towards, you know, the
Yeah.
achievement of how we're going to change the system, and we put the pressure on to get the government down, and we did. And then we turned out to our colleagues to continue the pressure to reach the president of the republic, and then to head back to the speaker of the house. And we looked around, and no one was there. And I'm not blaming them, because I know every single city had its own internal dynamic. But the battle for freedom should go beyond a call that a religious group can enforce on others. And I'm here pinpointing what the Lebanese, the Maronite Patriarch said, that now we have to support the president after the falling of the government. And I believe that was a strategic mistake taking place, you know, that forced people to move away from the streets, because some of those who were protesting, they felt like, gosh, no, we cannot piss the Patriarch Allah. We do want to piss everyone off because we want to build a country. I'm going to break all my religious affiliation. And when I say break the religious affiliation, it's not about being like an atheist. No, it's about saying no. For Lebanon to be built on solid grounds, the national interest should be based on the interest of the people.
So you think Tripoli did some soul searching and did something?
I believe yes.
And the rest of the country maybe did not do enough of it.
I won't say, I don't want to be perceived as blaming. At the contrary, I want to say that Tripoli is still hoping for others to say, hey, we're going to do this together.
Right.
And I know they have their reasons.
Yeah.
And I know in some reasons people were afraid of having even internal fights against protesters from both sides of the street. It's about thinking about making an internal decision, saying, you know what, I'm free from any political affiliation. I'm free for any religious affiliation. You know what? My relationship with God is my relationship with God. And it's in me, and it's going to guide my approach in the values that I believe they are a better fit for Lebanon. And this is how we connect with each other. So if Obeida would say I'm free as well from my political affiliation, I don't see why I cannot, you know, join hands with him and continue. And the same goes, and we have to do our internal self-reflection.
And I think what October 17 has did is also changed the discussion itself and the discourse. So even the topics that were discussed before October 7, especially within the government or with people, is always about sects, about securing these people, about the balance between these power, about Iran and Saudi Arabia. And then the whole discussion has shifted. And you can see it because they were also posing a lot of taxes. And then, okay, just flip it to another page, and these are the new topics that we have.
But are you as sort of, you're right, maybe not disappointed, but do you feel the same way about Tripoli doing its part and maybe other regions unable to do their part? Do you feel the same?
I think we are doing that's why I mentioned this point, because we are doing also the same for these other regions. So we are also changing the discussion to somewhere else, because they are afraid of the internal conflict. So we are saying, but actually it's not the problem, and you would not have any problem actually. Tripoli as a big action in the country is a big message that the revolution did not end, have a long way to go. People here are struggling more, and you can see the problems at an extreme level that you cannot see it in other regions.
Right.
So unfortunately it's playing this role because of the economic crisis effect on Tripoli in the last 30 years. But at least it's pushing Lebanon again and again in the proper direction. Otherwise, I think everyone would go to their home and we will have another set of taxes.
Now it's impossible to ever imagine a WhatsApp tax. 2 months ago, it was embarrassing. Now it's just, that's it'd be very ironic if the technocratic government brings it back. Says, no, this is a great idea. I doubt it. I originally from Tripoli. I've never seen this kind of optimism from a place that's not usually associated with optimism. And I think people are turning the page here. And I'm glad both of you are very hopeful. Makes me more hopeful. So with all that said, thank you for doing a fantastic job, and thank you for giving me your time. And I hope years from now we'll have another episode where we talk about the successes of this revolution. So, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Obeida.
Thank you, Ron.